All right, this is Parviz Malakouti Fitzgerald. Thank you guys for joining. Thanks for everybody who's here. Today, we want to talk about Argentina's announcement. Argentina is announcing a new proposal for citizenship by investment and just get people's thoughts on it. Who is this for? What do people think about the value proposition? And then, of course, hand in hand with that question is how do you value a citizenship? What really matters in a citizenship? And I'm hoping that we can get as many people as possible to come up and speak, give their opinion, even if it's just for a quick moment to give their apparent, their perspective on the matter. And then, of course, I'd be happy, of course, to give my own perspective on what I think matters in a citizenship and how they should be rated or discounted, as Patrick said, Patrick McFawn yesterday. So everybody is welcome to speak. Anybody who wants to can just ask for the mic. I know Patrick is going to talk a little bit. We're going to go back and forth about how to value a citizenship. And then I think we're also going to have Manuel Panero from Paraguay Unlocked. He's a South American attorney, Argentine attorney who helps people with Argentina and Paraguay. So so let's just kick it off. Anybody who wants to speak, just shoot a request for the microphone, and we'll go from there. So, okay, we have Alex here, Patience is Alpha is here, Patrick's here, and then of course people can listen anonymously. So maybe we got some anonymous listeners out there as well. Okay, let's start off with Patrick. Patrick had a really interesting comment yesterday on Twitter, and I'm going to read from his comment. He wrote, "A CBI program should be judged on its merits and the factors a country can control. If a second country can change visa/immigration policy from the host country quickly, then the mobility access should be discounted appropriately." I thought that's a great comment, really insightful. I agree with it. Patrick, would you like to explain a little bit of what you mean there, and then of course we can go from there. So, all right, Patrick, you're on.
Thanks for uh, having me speak first. I feel a little bit like I'm at the buzzer of a game show. Um, yeah, I think this is a really unique. Um, I think this is a really unique point in the CBI mobility world because so many CBIs in the past are either, kind of the flat donation Caribbean model, and then we've seen a lot of in the last maybe 3 to 4 years, a lot more of these like invest in real estate or some designated investment vehicle and get citizenship. And Argentina is unique because it's essentially saying we're going to follow some sort of similar mold of that, but the Argentine passport is not Egypt or Turkey. It's not a Caribbean passport where the geographic footprint is a lot smaller. It's quite a unique proposal because of what Argentina is and what that opportunity is or can be for a lot of people. So I guess I'll start with that. But um, I guess the way I think about it is everyone goes to the CBI example of the Caribbean. And if you are an administrator in for one of these programs in the Caribbean, the one thing that keeps you up at night is Europe shutting off your access or essentially controlling the levers of power over how much you can charge or the depth of diligence that you have to provide because part of the value proposition is this access to the European Union. And I think that leads to that tweet I had, which was they should be judged on their merits. And everyone goes to that example that I just listed, but I think it's helpful to look at other examples of other dynamics between countries and what that flexibility looks like because the relationship between a country and another country is in fact a real politique power dynamic. And you can see that in the Caribbean example. In Argentina, that might be a little bit different because you don't know what the priorities of the country are. If the priorities of the country are just pure citizenship, then they're going to protect that program. If Europe comes knocking and says, hey, we're going to change visa access to the European Union, do they have the tools in their realpolitik tool chest to be able to say, not so fast? If you threaten that, we have another tool we can threaten you with. Be that, reciprocal visa restrictions or some level of trade barriers. Keep in mind, Mercosur is, in fact, historically has acted more like a customs union. And so I think considering those factors, you really get to see what a country can control and what it can't control. And so, a fantastic example, counterexample, is the United States during COVID. The U.S., U.S. citizenship and its accompanying passport is considered broadly a very powerful travel document. But during COVID, that was outside of the U.S.'s control. Every other country said, for health reasons, we're gonna forbid someone to land who has a U.S. passport. And so, but similarly, 3 years later, everyone talks about, among the many CBI programs, who has visa-free access to China was a big selling point because so few people had it. But then suddenly, 3 years after the pandemic, China said we really need more tourists, and so they relinquished travel visa restrictions on a slew of citizenships. Predominantly, one that comes to mind is Italy. And so you really see, like, did the Italians really sit there and push hard so that they could have visa-free access to China? No, totally outside of their control. It was China saying, we want more tourists. And that's not an EU thing. That's specific to Italy. There's a couple other countries as well. But I'm getting real chatty and endless here. But the point is that when you look at a citizenship and its accompanying benefits, those benefits are going to be unique to the country, and they're going to be unique to the country's interests. You shouldn't buy them for a secondary or a tertiary benefit, particularly because those ones are generally outside of the country's control. And so I'll leave it there because I can yammer on for hours, but I
No,
think that's a good spot to stop.
absolutely, yeah. So you raised a number of great points here, and I like to put labels on concepts and dynamics, right? Because there's some that are repetitive, and it's just kind of easier than just describing, I guess, the phenomenon each time. So I call those springboard benefits. What I define as a springboard benefit is basically a benefit that you get by being citizen or resident in one country vis-a-vis access to a third country. So that the most common springboard benefit, of course, would be visa-free access, but also ancillary rights of residence, ability to use consulates in the second country of citizenship to apply for a visa to a third country. I call those all springboard benefits. And of course, Patrick, exactly like you said, they are more vulnerable to involuntary degradation because it relies on the relationship between the country of citizenship with third party countries. All those benefits are per treaty, convention, some sort of agreement. And it takes, of course, at least two to tango in order to have a valid treaty or an agreement. So if there's any diplomatic tiff, or a souring of relations, or even just not even a souring of relations, but basically for other policy reason, if that access is cut off by that other country, by the third country, then the benefit is gone or at least degraded, right? So I totally agree with you, Patrick, that's maybe I would stop short of saying a person shouldn't get a citizenship in another country for a springboard benefit, because in some cases, even with that risk of voluntary degradation, it still might be worth it, right? So I'm thinking about, high flying business people, businessmen from third world countries. It might be worth it for them to get to buy a citizenship for visa free access to certain countries, even if it only lasts a few years. But it should be viewed through the lens of proper discounting, exactly like you said, Patrick, in that tweet. That benefit should be appropriately discounted because it's vulnerable to third parties, third countries, as opposed to highest right of residency and entry in the citizenship, in the country of citizenship, right? Argentina, of course, unique, okay, because it's a desirable destination on its own, right? It's a huge landmass. I'm also a believer, and I know this is unpopular with some people, but I'm a believer that actually the landmass of the country is very relevant to how powerful the citizenship is, because the highest right of entry to a country is to the landmass of that country. So that's why I scoff at, passport ranking lists that, list like a mini country like UAE or Singapore as possibly being the most powerful citizenship or passport. I don't think that's possible. I mean, they can be great and all, but I don't think you can have highest immediate right of access and residency in a tiny speck of dirt, on the Earth's surface, and that could constitute the world's greatest citizenship. I don't think so. So anyway, that's my piggybacking on Patrick. We have the great Manuel Pinero from Paraguay unlocked here, of course. Manuel's at ground zero with these Argentine developments. He's a lawyer in South America. Manuel, do you want to come up here and give us your thoughts on the proposal for Argentine citizenship, and specifically any challenges that you see to either the proposal being enacted and possibly attack vectors, right? If somebody does want to actually go for this. Go ahead,
Okay.
Manuel.
So yeah, one thing I find interesting when looking at various programs is how hard is it to get otherwise? And I think this is where the Argentine program might be a little weak, and that Argentina is famous for relatively short naturalization timelines through ordinary methods, as well as even faster timelines through child or marriage in Argentina as well. And given that it's such a livable country, it only makes this worse in that I don't think it's that much of a sacrifice for someone to spend 2, 3 years living in Argentina to acquire the citizenship. If you're a remote worker, then I mean, many remote workers already do this voluntarily. So that's one factor that I think works against Argentina's favor when they're actually selling the citizenship. Because if you're a mobile person, it depends on the customer, obviously. If you're a digital nomad type that could live anywhere, you might just say, well, I'd rather live in Argentina and buy something like Turkey, which would be much harder to get otherwise. Or say St. Kitts. I think it's 14 years naturalization timeline, if I remember correctly. Very hard to get otherwise through standard naturalization. The second counterpoint against Argentina, and maybe it's 2 and 2.5, is that renouncing your citizenship is difficult, maybe impossible depending on who you ask and one's circumstances. And given its history of Peronism, I think that presents as a big danger. What happens if there's a citizenship-based tax like the US does to Argentine citizens and you can't renounce? That seems like a very dangerous scenario. I know there's questions about enforcement, but generally I tend to think enforcement gets easier as technology grows and as the international agreements grow. So that would be one of my big concerns as well with Argentine citizenship, is the inability to renounce it. If not for those two factors, I think this program would be one of the most attractive in the industry because, as previous people alluded to, this is a real desirable country with lots of land. I believe G20 country as well, and major power in the region and to some degree globally in terms of GDP size and brand.
Excellent points. I have my own thoughts on those, but I want to hear from Manuel. Go ahead, Manuel.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks, Parvis, for the invitation. Nice to share this space with you, along Patrick and Alex and everybody else. Well, this is Manuel here. I'm an attorney at law from Argentina, but connected from my Paraguay Twitter account. So, well, first of all, I have to say that everybody has a lot of expectation in Argentina in the legal field about this announcement, but up to the moment, it's only an announcement, okay? So the fine print, the executive order hasn't been released. I'm checking the official gazette every night to check if the decree is there, the executive order is there, but no news about that yet. I hope this appear very soon because everybody is making a lot of speculation about which the requirements will be. But first of all, I want to say that in this case, it would be, or it might be, the first citizenship program based on investment in South America currently effective. I was told today by a colleague on Twitter that there was another one in the past in Peru in 1982. I was checking around, not so much information about that, but it was something like a $20 citizenship program in Peru, 1992, but it was cancelled because citizens wasn't happy with that. So in this case, Argentina will be some kind of leading case regarding this in South America. The only thing we know is that the main requirement will be $500,000 in order to get citizenship. From there, a lot of speculation. First of all, we don't know which the specific requirements will be. We don't know if some limitations will apply. I must assume that a strict due diligence is expected, of course. We have a lot of sensitive countries that we don't know if they are going citizens from these sensitive countries from the intelligence perspective will be accepted or not. So we still don't know. We need to wait for the fine print to be released in order to start making any kind of assessment or eventually any kind of legal assistance offer on this. So only two things we know about that: $500,000, and that a special agency will be created to deal with this program. Another thing is that some people was asking about, okay, can I do bond investment? Can I keep my capital inside the country for a while and then take it out? I would say that no, because the main target of this is any kind of investment related to production projects, real economic projects, and creating employment. Some people say it will be 10 employers at least. I was checking the Citizenship Act in Argentina, which was enacted in 1869. So we are talking about more than 150 years under this Citizenship Act. And there is a provision there stating that Argentina citizenship can be granted to anyone investing in the country in productive projects. So it was written more than 50 years ago. I would say that this would be the legal base for this executive order. Some people is complaining about that. I think that are the loopholes exploiters of Argentina citizenship 2 years path. It will still remain, of course, because this is on the national constitution. But I think this program will open a door for some people who want to work on a second or third or fourth passport, have the means to do that, and they want to invest in the country. So a lot of opportunities will come. But again, we don't know which countries passport holders will be limited to apply. And this is something we will need to discover very, very soon.
Thank you, Manuel. That's very helpful. I want to come back to what Alex said. He brought up 2 points, which I thought were excellent points. First of all, the fact that Argentine citizenship through other paths, at least until now, right? And of course, this is in flux, as we're seeing, as Manuel's been tweeting about. At least until now, Argentine citizenship has been relatively attainable. I agree, Alex, that that's probably going to cut away a lot of the attractiveness for somebody who does not mind having significant physical presence in Argentina on the path to naturalization eligibility, possibly 6+ months, right? So for that potential, aspiring dual citizen, multiple citizen, maybe the citizenship by investment program is not that attractive. But there are a lot of people, especially Americans, and of course I'm a little bit more sensitive to the American market because I serve mostly Americans that are outbound, for citizenship. There's a lot of people who want either a second citizenship or to work towards a second citizenship without having to be physically present for a significant period of time yearly in a foreign country, and definitely not for more than half of the year, more than 182, 183 days per year. And for that cohort, I still think that the Argentine citizenship by investment program, if it ever comes to fruition, would definitely be attractive prima facie on its face, right? The other issue is the issue of renunciability, right? And I think it's an excellent question. It's kind of a question I dove into a little bit about a year or two ago, trying to, look up some, cases, look up the Constitution. And you're right, Alex. It's very much, who, depending on who you speak to, right? There's differing opinions, even among, Argentine lawyers that I've spoken to, about how renounceable the citizenship is. I consider that, to be a big deal, right? People, most people don't go into naturalizing into a country ever thinking about having to renounce, but I'm a big believer in being able to exit just as freely as you're able to enter. Okay, because things change, right? Policies change. Like Patrick said, I think it was Patrick. Citizenship, based taxation policies change as well. I think it's important for a person that's naturalizing, especially if they're incurring a significant capital outlay to do so, be confident in their ability to renounce the citizenship. I don't want to put Manuel on the spot here because I don't know if it's something that he's researched greatly. But Manuel, do you have any insights or do you have a position on how renounceable you believe Argentine citizenship is? And it's totally fine if not. I understand. I'm
Yeah,
totally putting you on the spot.
yeah. We have two situations here. We have the I would say that the, the current frame and the expected frame from the investment program. Because I was thinking something about the investment program. What would happen if you, at some point, you get the citizenship, but you don't comply with some requirements? So it will be subject to revocation. So it would be a secondary path to have your citizenship revoked. It's some kind of indirect pronouncement if you are not allowed to. But still, we need to wait what the fine print is going to state, because renouncement situation, there are some exceptions that usually happen, but the main base about the Argentina citizenship is not able to be renounced is that in Argentina, you cannot renounce to a right. You have the right to be a citizen. So how can you renounce to having that right? That's the legal reasoning in a lot of case law regarding this. So you cannot renounce a right, okay? And the citizenship is a main right. So what will happen with the investment program? We don't know again, but I think that this situation will be considered at some point. But in the case it's not considered because a lot of the people in this field has a lot of concerns about renouncement options. So I think the people who's writing this, and this will come with a massive migratory reform, and I know some people that are working on this. They are extremely deep researchers, academics. So I think and I expect they will consider an option to renounce under this situation, because this is a special program. So I think that maybe a special rule will apply regarding this. But if this is not the case, still we have to think, okay, if you want to get out of this citizenship, how can you do that? Okay, maybe you have to not comply with the requirements or the obligations you have assumed in order to get the citizenship. So what happens if you finally decide to get all the capital outside of the country, or you do not create the employments you are expected to create? Okay, reasonable questions we will soon know.
Understood. Thank you, Manuel. So, if follow-up question on that, presumably, if there's a citizenship, an Argentine citizenship by investment, that requires some period of investment, presumably there would be an end to that period. So 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, some period after which the applicant is relieved of their obligations in order to maintain the citizenship. They did everything they're supposed to have done. They no longer have any controls over any basically obligation over where to put the money. At that point, Manuel, right, there would not be necessarily any additional compliance required by the prospective applicant. Do you still believe that at that point, and again, I understand I'm asking you to speculate here. This is all speculation, but do you still believe at that point that the Argentine citizen by investment would have some mechanism whereby they could offload the citizenship and renounce?
No, I can make any speculation on that. Only thing I think is that regarding investment, it will be required upfront, maybe into a block bank account, because the special agency to be created to deal with this program will depend directly of the Minister of Economics in Argentina. So maybe in order to start your due diligence procedure, you will need to be able to demonstrate or to wire the $500,000 into some kind of block bank account. So regarding the compromise about the money, it would be very easy to require from the country to the prospective applicant, right? But after that, if you have the money inside the country, you get the citizenship, your business plan was approved by the economic minister, etc., etc. Okay, at some point you will need to work on the industry, right? So what happens? What happens if you don't comply with that? I think that revocation will come at some point, or a lot of people would be interested in starting denouncing people not complying with this program. So I think that if you think from a subjective perspective, anyone putting $500,000 into a block account, it would be really interesting in having the citizenship at all.
Okay, thank you. Um, Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add here a little bit more academic, but from the perspective of a relinquishment of citizenship. There's a period of time back before multiple citizenship was openly allowed, where, particularly from the US perspective, that if you had naturalized in the US, but then you left the country for more than 2 years, you were presumed to have regained your citizenship elsewhere. And if you came back, you had to get up an immigration attorney and reassert that right that you did not, in fact, relinquish your American citizenship. And in that period of time, I believe, if I remember correctly, was 1907 to 1932. And I bring up that historical example because today, with the changes in Italian citizenship by descent law, there is an aspect that if you don't maintain some form of your duties as a citizen over a 10 to 20-year period, they can relinquish your citizenship, particularly if you have never lived in the country. So if you are an Italian citizenship by descent, but you don't vote, you don't get a passport issued, you don't register through their, Italian living abroad system, after 20 years they can say, we don't think you really care. And so they cut your tie. And so I think, as the world leans into greater mobility and citizenship access, I do think there is going to naturally be, not just necessarily for Argentina, but I think there will naturally be a control mechanism because, as society, as time moves on, people will get more and more citizenships if there is not this function that can cancel them due to inactivity or some like passive form of inaction.
Right, Patrick, great point. And you know, there's a fine line, right? Because as a citizen, a multiple citizen, um, I think you don't want your theory of a person's theory of renunciability, if that's even a term, to stem from the fact that the citizenship can be revoked based off of something. You don't want that to be the basis of the theory of the right to renounce. We want to be able to renounce when we want to and not have the country have the right to revoke it involuntarily, right? Like that's the sweet spot, right? At least in my opinion, right? That nobody can involuntarily take it from you, but you have a robust right yourself to relinquish the citizenship, right? That's kind of what I consider. That's what I consider the gold standard, basically, as far as robustness of citizenship. But no, great point there, Patrick. Patience as alpha. Do you want to dive in here? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to just continue on, and anybody who wants to jump in, of course, just speak. So the other thing that I'm thinking about here that I'm curious about is possible negative reaction by other countries, right? If Argentina does enact a citizenship by investment program, and if in fact the program is flooded with applicants, let's say maybe at least 10,000 applicants per year, right? Um, is there going to be a reaction from countries that Argentine citizens have springboard benefits to? So countries that let's say Shenzhen or UK or other areas that want to restrict Argentine citizenship, Argentine visa-free access based off of the fact that there's a citizenship by investment program, or other countries that want to make carve outs in their treaties, okay, for Argentine citizens by investment, the same way the US has a carve out for the e visa treaties, right? People who have a citizenship in a country that has access to US e treaties, right? If they got that citizenship by investment, there's a requirement that they be domiciled in that country for at least 3 years before they qualify for a U.S. E-treaty, right? So that's a particular disability of citizens by investment, right? And of course, there's not that many right now that countries that have citizenship by investment that are members of the E-treaty, but Grenada is one of them in the Caribbean, and Argentina is party to the E treaty with the United States. So ostensibly that would be a small disability for Argentine citizens by investment. So does anybody have any thoughts on whether they think that there's going to be pushback from other countries that try to restrict visa-free access to Argentine citizens by investment?
I think all eyes should be on the EU because they've spoken out against citizenship by investment without meeting certain standards. And the standards seem to be getting worse and worse as time goes on. And it would be a chance for the EU to flex its muscle. And there may even be some pressure from farming countries in the EU that might be concerned about Argentina exporting farm products to the EU. So I could see there being some back channeling in regards to that, as well as a real assertion of EU power on the global stage to say that, like with data privacy, USB-C cords, we can leverage our access to our market to regulate global industries, including CBI.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. I think that's a great breakdown of it. Look at the US versus the EU. Since the US pretty much doesn't provide visa-free access to many countries, they have the ability to create those carve-outs, right, for the e-visas. Whereas the EU, instead of doing a carve-out, they usually either push it through a legal means or through a trade means. And I think the USB-C, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, the USB-C cord for Apple products was a compliance requirement for the EU. They were the ones who forced Apple to stop using the Lightning drive. And I think you're going to see that with in the CBI space. And I think also, it also comes down to, the generational politics of the time, right? So immigration in Europe is a uh, radioactive topic. And then on top of that, if they perceive it to be a tool for, you know, Russians or Ukrainians, and there is a difference on a policy issue there, they'll absolutely say, if you're moving that kind of money, I mean, you can't take, a couple thousand euros out of an ATM in Spain. Like if you're moving, $500,000, and you're presumably from a country that the EU doesn't like, they might not even say, "Oh, we want to get in the space and regulate it." They might just say, "Nope, not even worth our time. We're going to just push it to court and force you to change the policy, or just broadly write off the visa-free access." So I think there's a bunch of different tools in their chest, but I think you're going to see a lot of it. I think you're definitely going to see some pushback, and also, as a total side note, you know, in most countries in the world, OECD countries specifically, agriculture is
Excellent point from both of you, Patrick and Alex. And I had not thought at all about that, about specifically a pressure point on the agricultural sectors. Um, one thing I realized we didn't really go over is what are all the benefits of Argentine citizenship generally, and what are the potential benefits that could irk other countries, right? That could create some sort of reaction, right? The first one that comes to mind, of course, is visa-free access, I think. But with Argentine citizenship, you have, of course, the highest right of residency and entry in the country. There's visa-free access. There's also some benefits vis-a-vis other Mercosur countries. Um, Manuel, do you want to go over some of the benefits of Argentine citizenship, and then we can kind of go through them one by one, and just have an open discussion of which of those benefits we think could create a reaction from other countries potentially.
Well, that's very potentially, and maybe this is why it was announced that the executive order was still under work in order to avoid any kind of potential problems. I would say inside Argentina and outside Argentina, so the due diligence um, regarding any applicant will be a key part of the process. Argentina has strong access all over the world. According to Passport Index, Argentina passport is the 11 is in the 11th position in the world than other countries. And I would say that it's not going to change because anyway, the citizenship path to have an Argentina citizenship granting is only 2 years. So if you have to face any kind of problem, you will face it anyway. 2 years ago, some legal spies from Russia uh, was detained in Slovenia with Argentina passport, real passports. So we have a lot of people coming from all around the world entering the country as tourists, remaining in the country without any kind of migratory status, and then claiming citizenship. So if we have a problem, we have the problem right now. It won't change because of the $500,000 investment for CBI program. We really have the problem with thousands of people claiming citizenship without military status in Argentina. And I can mention a lot of countries, the most remote countries in the world, people from these kind of countries doing that in Argentina. So the problem is a real one. It exists, and I think it's not going to be worse than the current problem we have. And the massive migratory reform, we still expecting to be published as well. I think it will cover one of these issues because um, from loopholes in the migratory law or law frame in Argentina, as the same with the citizenship law frame. So my personal belief, this is not a legal opinion, is that this is something that has to change at some point, and I hope it does with the reforms we are expecting.
Thank you, Manuel. Manuel, I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal ball. And I know as lawyers, we don't like to give speculative opinions on the future, but I'm going to ask you to indulge us. Here's my question. If there is an Argentine citizenship by investment program, and if applicants from certain countries are excluded, which countries do you think are most likely to be those countries that are excluded from consideration?
Well, the easiest one are the countries. Maybe Argentina will take some kind of the blacklist from the world, like it could be the terrorism list, which is elaborated by the United States. It could be a form to exclude some applicants. That would be the easy one. If I have to speculate, excluding passport holders or applicants being born in countries that are considered countries helping terrorism around the world on the U.S. list. I would say that.
Got it. So, um, would it be safe to say that list might include Iran, Syria, possibly Russia, possibly Sudan? Does that sound like countries that might be excluded? And again, we're speculating. We will say it again. We're just speculating. We don't know, of course, what the real reality is yet.
Yeah, that's all speculation, but I would say so. There is no reason to give any benefit to a country or that is in any blacklist in the world regarding supporting terrorism. Right?
Got it. We also know simultaneously Argentina is trying to tighten up its residency requirements and its path to naturalization, right? Even independently of this new citizenship by investment program. In the United States, you know, a lot of people have some sort of criminal record, if you count misdemeanors as well. It's estimated at least 40 million. So it's not an uncommon thing, right? Like, it's not very pleasant to talk about, but a large percentage of people have some sort of brush with the law that results in a misdemeanor or a felony. Do you have any insight, Manuel, on whether you think if there's an Argentine citizenship by investment program, people with criminal record will be allowed at all? Is it possible that they'll just say, "Hey, complete clean slate or nothing," or will allow some if it's a minor crime from a long time ago?
Yeah, we have two or three point of view regarding this, because I have to talk about the current trend, right? And the current trend states that it states two visions. So we have certain types of crimes that are banned, okay, like drugs crimes, genocide, human rights crimes, etc. So anyone with this kind of crimes cannot even enter into the country, right? But we have other types of crimes that will be assessed depending on the time from the sentence you have had on that. So that's an entry door we have, and we need to assess if your crime has been committed in the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, so that's the current trend. But as I said before, we are expecting a migratory reform that which is expected to be stricter. Okay, so according to the announcement, because all we have is an announcement, anyone with any kind of crime in the past is not going to be allowed to apply for residency. So we must expect that if you are not allowed to apply for residency, you won't be allowed to apply for citizenship based on investment. But again, that's a speculation. It's very, very difficult to talk about this, having while all of us are waiting for the migratory reform to be released.
Thank you. So all we have so far is an announcement, right? We don't have any fine print or even any large print, right? Citizenship by investment, $500,000, presumably recoupable, although that's not exactly clear. What other programs do we think this is going to compete with, right, on the market? We have Turkey with a $400,000 investment, but obviously way fewer springboard benefits provided by Turkish citizenship, as opposed to Argentine citizenship. And then, of course, we have Caribbean programs, which all have donation options. Some of them have investment options. If the Argentine citizenship by investment comes to fruition, what other program is this going to take the most market share from? Does anybody have an opinion on this?
Hey, Patience is Alpha here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Patience.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. I was asking myself, what is the competition to that new program if it is, and for a program like Turkey, the market is pretty straightforward. You have people from the Middle East. You have people that need to that are either exposed in terms of business in Turkey or want to be closer to Europe geographically. For Argentina, it's a little bit more complex in my opinion, because it's geographically a little bit far away from other customer base. You have the upside of the time zone, I guess, for people in America, but also historically Americans have really been in love with Europe. the golden visa programs, they don't really need ease of travel. So I think we'd have to think about what market, what kind of individuals does that serve. And like Alex said earlier, there are already individuals that are exposed to Argentina on the ground, the digital nomads, the folks like that could wait it out. Turkey has this big advantage that it's a clear program. It was a little bit better in the past, but it's a clear program in terms of what happens to your assets once you invest them. It also is not aligned with Europe. I mean, that's debatable, but at least there's this non-alignment that exists. I'm not really sure about the situation for Argentina. I think price point, we're probably close to the truth. Um, all that to say, if you really need visa-free travel and that's your only concern, you have the CBI option that are way cheaper. That's pretty much it. I'm really not sure what's the best path, but what's the best people that this going to be targeting, right?
Appreciate that insight. I agree that the market is a little less clear, right, than other programs, Caribbean and Turkey. I believe there's going to be some market, a large market actually in the United States of entrepreneurs that are not necessarily as location independent as straight digital nomads, or they are as mobile, but they just do not want to spend more than 6 months per year in Argentina, but they want a second citizenship. I think that's going to be a market that's going to develop for this. So entrepreneurs that are working, that are in the height of their careers, they want the citizenship. They don't necessarily want right now to have to be physically present in the country for a long time. And again, especially if that investment ends up being a recoupable investment, right? In CBI, we use the term investment very loosely and broadly, right? We even use that to mean a straight donation, which of course is not an investment. It's more of just a purchase, a transaction, right? So if investment in Argentine CBI truly means recoupable investment, I think we're going to get a lot of entrepreneurs from the United States. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I'm very curious as well to see, who ends up applying for this. What's going to be the profile from other countries, whether Middle Eastern countries or European countries or elsewhere. Okay, anybody else want to come up? We got Drew in LA in the house. We have Ramesh. Thanks for showing up, Ramesh. Ramesh is a scholar of multiple citizenship and specifically statehood. And he's got some interesting stuff. You might want to check out his X account as well. Anything else? I was thinking we go for an hour, so wrap it up in about 8 or 9 minutes. If anybody wants to, otherwise we can end a little early.
Yeah, I have a couple little concluding thoughts I'll add here. I think the interesting thing about CBI here is that we all have this somewhat decent assumption that the size of the market is consistent over time, and I would argue that it's not, and that it's increasing quite significantly. Um, and I think that has always been true for some parts of the world, but that is increasingly true in the United States. Um, Yesterday, or maybe it was today, I don't remember. Time bleeds together. But I posted, there was an article, I think it was in Newsweek, where it was like the new American dream is dual citizenship. And if you're looking at a country like Argentina, I think Patience Alpha was right on the money, where he's like, hey, from a price point, you would think this would compete with Turkey, maybe with Egypt, maybe. But in a way, it's a lot more beneficial, but at the same time, it might not be as applicable to the traditional markets for CBI. And so, in a way, this program might be a little bit aspirational in that it's assuming that more people will be interested in second citizenship, and two, they're willing to pay for it, and three, that that they want to be able to do it without leaving their home country, and that historically has not always been true, but it is increasingly true. And is that worth the difference between a traditional naturalization route versus staying put in, say, the United States and purchasing that? That's a personal decision, and that value justification is different for everyone. But I think it is a little bit, in a way, it's a little bit of a sign of the times that this market continues to grow, and this is a product that I think is pretty close to being priced effectively. And whether or not it gobbles up parts of the old market or creates a little bit of a new market, I think time will tell, but it'll probably be a combination of the two.
Great point there. And this, of course, this is just my opinion and speculation. If there becomes a program, an Argentine citizenship by investment program, I think there's going to be a large influx. Okay, I think it's going to be very popular in the beginning. At least the long term hidden attack vector that I'm very curious about, okay, is whether more countries start distinguishing citizenship based off of whether it was obtained by investment or not. Do they start discriminating against citizens by investment? Okay, so does a third party country start looking at you? You showed up in that country with your passport, as visa free, or let's say you're opening a business or trying to take advantage of some sort of other country treaty benefit. Is that third country going to start looking and inquiring into how you obtained your citizenship? And if it's by investment, are they going to start excluding it? Are they going to try to do a nota bomb, right? Are they going to try to do what the U.S. does with the E2, treaty? If they don't, then I think, the citizenship by investment program in Argentina and other similarly priced programs are going to just continue to explode in popularity. But it's possible in 5-10 years that we've seen, foreign countries, third countries now start to distinguish. And if they're distinguishing, then what in effect it means is you start having tiered Argentine citizenship. You have Argentine citizenship by all other methods, and then the citizenship by investment, okay, which gets treated a little bit differently, right? So that's kind of my long-term concern, about and it's not a concern that's specific to Argentine citizenship by investment. It's for any citizenship by investment, Vanuatu as well, okay? And I'm just very curious to see how that shakes out, right? All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for everybody who showed up. And I think it was productive. I had a great time. It was fun. And I'm going to do more spaces. So stay tuned. And if you're interested in these topics, we'll be having more spaces. And if you have an idea for spaces related to this or piggybacking on this, just feel free to write it in the comments or shoot me a DM, and maybe we'll make another spaces surrounding that. So thanks, everybody. Have a great one.